What's up guys? Today we're going to be checking out the successor to last year's SL10 soundbar, the SN11RG. Now before we get into it, if you're new to the channel, then be sure to tap that subscribe button for new weekly videos like this one. Inside, we get an optical cable, batteries, some documentation, wall mounts, the subwoofer power cable, and the remote control. Now this is a 7.1.4 soundbar, so it does come with a dedicated subwoofer and surround channels. It supports Dolby Atmos, DTS-X, high-res audio, has room correction, Google Assistant built-in, and EARC support. Size-wise, the bar measures 56.8 inches wide by 2.5 inches high by 5.8 inches deep, and it weighs 15.9 pounds. Since this is 7.1.4 capable, you'll find 3 speakers up front, left, right, and a dedicated center channel. There's side-firing speakers on each end, and there's also up-firing speakers on the top corners to give it that overhead sound. Each one of the speakers is rated at 50 watts each. Up top, you'll find touch-sensitive controls for power, function, volume, play pause, microphone mute, and the Google Assistant button. Around back is a USB input, an optical in, HDMI out with EARC, and 2 HDMI inputs. Moving over to the rear speakers, they're fairly small, measuring 5.1 inches high by 8.3 inches wide by 7.5 inches deep. They each have a single driver up front, and they also have an up-firing speaker on the top for rear overhead effects. Each of the rear speakers is also rated at 50 watts. Around back, you'll find the channel designation, the power input, and a pairing button. Lastly, we have the subwoofer. This measures 8.7 inches high by 15.4 inches wide by 12.3 inches deep, and it weighs 17.2 pounds. It's wrapped in black speaker cloth and is rated at 200 watts. Around back, you'll see it's a ported subwoofer. There's only the power input and a pairing button. I'll be placing the soundbar underneath my TV. The surround speakers will be placed near the back wall, and the subwoofer will be up front. All you have to do is plug an HDMI cable into the HDMI ARC on the bar to the HDMI ARC on your television. Next, you're going to plug the rear speakers in and the subwoofer. Once the light stops flashing, you'll know that you're connected to the soundbar. Next thing you might want to do is download the LG Wi-Fi speaker app. You don't have to download the app, but there are some extra features you get if you do. From here, you can change the inputs, and you can control the volume. Under sound effects, you have a few different preset options. There's a nighttime mode to keep things from getting too loud, dynamic range control, Neural X upmixing on and off, auto volume, sync delay from 0 to 300 milliseconds, room correction, which we'll get to in a minute, subwoofer level from -15 to +6, center speaker level from -6 to +6, and you can adjust the levels for the rest of the speakers here as well. If you always want to hear surround coming from the rear speakers, you can always keep this turned on. Otherwise, if there is no surround in a show you're watching, it'll play without the surrounds. And here you have some HDMI CEC controls. A sleep timer from off to 120 minutes, and you can also reset the settings. Next thing we're going to do is set up the room calibration. This should help with the surround effect. Alright, I'll be honest with you, I didn't hear a difference when playing the before and after clip. It sounded identical to me, so I'm not exactly sure what it did. Okay, now I'm just going to run through this part really quick if you want to set up Google Assistant. First thing you'll have to do is open the Google Home app. Click Setup Devices, choose the LG, and just follow the prompts. So now you can ask it things like, "Okay Google, where is the nearest post office?" First thing we're going to do is test out how good the channel separation is. I'm going to throw in the DTS-X 7.1.4 channel callout demo.
Left front, right front, center, left side surround, right side surround, left rear, right rear, left front height, right front height, left rear height, right rear height.
The problem that I have with last year's model carries over to this year's model. There are times if you're watching a movie with a lot of music or effects, the center channel would get drowned out and become very hard to hear. Once the effects and the music stops, the center channel goes back to normal. If you raise the center channel level to hear what's happening, once the music stops, the center channel becomes way too loud.
Sound could be extraordinary. Again.
Engines are up and burning. Opening main doors for secondary deployment. 2 are away.
This sound could be captivating. Subtle. Authentic. This sound can get deeper. More than that. There's no need to wonder, because you're listening to Dolby Atmos.
If you like your big action movies, then this could potentially become an annoying issue for you. I do like having the up-firing speakers for the rears, as it does give you a better bubble of sound compared to last year's model. During the DTS-X demo, I found the front high channels was decent and that it does give you that sensation that sound is above the TV. But at the same time, I can tell it's coming from the top of the bar. The same goes for the rear height channels. For this particular demo, since it's a very direct sound effect, it sounded to me more like that specific back speaker just got louder, so I didn't get much of an overhead effect from the rear channels. The side channel speakers, since they are up front, sounded like, well, they were up front. It does give the front soundstage a wider upfront presence, but I didn't get the sensation that effects were off to the sides. Again, this demo has a very directional and distinct channel effect, so unless you're using actual separate speakers in the proper locations, I think it's going to be very hard for any soundbar to pass the test. Unlike the DTS-X demo where it's very distinct, I found that while watching movies, that overhead and side firing sound effects worked a lot better. Since we have all the other channels working in tandem, the illusion that a plane is flying above you or to the sides is a lot more convincing. It isn't as good as separate speakers, but it is good enough to envelop your listening area. As for the subwoofer, it throws out a crazy amount of bass, but it is the boomy kind of bass. It's got some good punch, but it does fall more on the sloppy side. If you're really particular about your low-end frequencies, then the subwoofer isn't going to cut it. If you just want huge impact for huge action flicks, then the subwoofer does an awesome job. If for whatever reason you want to use the system without the subwoofer, you'll find that it's pretty thin sounding and lacks good upper mid presence, so I'd highly suggest you keep the subwoofer always active. At the time of this video, the LG SN11RG retails for $1,700, although I'm sure you can get it on sale. It's not going to replace a receiver and separate speakers, and I don't think anyone would think it would. It's going to be for the folks that want Atmos and DTS-X and not have to run all the wires. Since this is somewhat wireless, I did notice a few dropouts from the subwoofer and from the rear channels. It didn't happen as often as, say, the Samsung soundbars, but it did happen nonetheless.
Right side surround. Right rear.
They do advise you to keep the speakers away from your wireless router since this could affect the sound dropouts. As mentioned earlier, the main problem I had was with the center channel getting lost whenever there was a lot of music or sound effects playing. It happened on last year's model, and this year's model does the same thing. I'm not sure if a firmware update could fix it, but it is a very annoying problem to have. If you're into watching comedies or dramas, then this might not be an issue for you. For movies like Midway, then yeah, it'll be an issue. I did find the overhead effects for Atmos and DTS-X movies sounded convincing enough and will give you a good bubble of sound. Keep in mind though that this will be very room dependent. If you've got very high or vaulted ceilings, then the height effects likely won't work. The subwoofer will give you some huge impact on blockbuster movies and will definitely shake your room. With that being said, if you don't have the space or want to deal with a lot of wires running everywhere, then the LG SN11 could be the solution you're looking for. So what are your thoughts on the LG soundbar? How do you feel about the surround effect, and how do you feel about the center channel? Leave a comment and let us know. Now if you want to grab this soundbar, I'll leave some links for it in the video's description, or you can always call Value Electronics and tell them we sent you. As always guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to give this video a like if you found it useful, and if you're not a subscriber, then tap the subscribe button, and we'll see you guys again in the next video.